Daryl, I always forget how this is supposed to go on. It's supposed to go on top of the head or behind the head? Okay. All right, good morning. Glad you guys are here. Welcome to Susanville Seventh-day Adventist Church for those who are here and for those who are joining us online. Glad you are here. As you guys know here, my name is Nathanial, and we're going to dive into the lesson today. Before we do that, though, let's ask God to be here with our conversation as we open up the Word. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, you're an amazing God. Lord, and we thank you for this opportunity to come together and to dialogue, to talk with one another, to pick each other's brains, to come closer to you, because it's not just my words, but it's all of our ideas that are bringing us closer to you, a better understanding of who you are and your grace. May your Holy Spirit enter into our minds and our thoughts. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Glad you guys are here. I see some smiling faces. That's good to hear. I see a few gentlemen without their ladies. That probably means that they're off at Leona Meadows. I know that this is the day that I know a lot of the ladies are off at the women's retreat. I know not everyone could make it, but I know we'll probably be short some ladies today. Today's lesson, lesson number 2, talking about Joshua. Last week we had Amigdio, and he was talking about Joshua and kind of that transfer over between Moses, who we've been talking about for the past 13 weeks, and the exodus out of Egypt. And that only brought us to Mount Sinai, though. There's still 40 years that kind of we skip over, and then we kind of jump into Joshua. But he's an amazing leader nonetheless. Lesson 2 is titled, Surprised by Grace. My question, I'm going to roam around with this thing again because I like people participation and I'm willing to walk this around. My question to you, what is grace? According to your understanding, dictionary term or not, what is grace?
We didn't do anything to obtain grace. Grace is something that God gives us in spite of ourselves.
Okay. Given to us despite ourselves, okay. In spite of ourselves, okay. Any other ideas of grace to add to that? God's undeserved faith? Favor to us, okay. So do we deserve it? No, it's undeserved. Okay, interesting. I like both of those distinctions. Yeah, we don't deserve it, right? But he gives it to us despite the fact that we might have messed up. Now, is this only a God thing?
No, we can treat other people with grace too, but grace is it's a gift of God. But it's something that we have to receive. We can choose not to receive that. That grace is there, but we can choose. Say, I don't care about that. I don't want it.
Okay. Interesting. So, yeah, there's definitely a choice. I agree with that, that God gives it to us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he forces it on us, right? There's a choice that we have to take. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And that's what we're going to talk about in the short 45 minutes. By the way, what time? I know it's a new time. What? 9:50? 10:55? 10:45. Okay, so I still got an hour. Okay. We're going to talk about this grace and 2 examples of this grace as Joshua enters Canaan. If you've been with me before, you know that I like to read the last chapter first. So, if anyone asks, did you guys get to Friday's lesson? Did you get to Friday? The answer will be yes, because we're going to go directly to Friday. So if you got your lesson, go back to Friday, and we're going to understand this whole, what we're talking about right now, and then we're going to go back and pick it apart and discover a little bit more how this is incredible. Before I get someone to read a certain section, I want to just kind of give a basic outline of what's going on in this lesson. Joshua has not crossed over the Jordan River yet. However, he is concerned about what's on the other side of the Jordan, and he is going to be sending some spies. So he sends some spies to Jericho. They meet Rahab. Rahab decides to hide the spies. The spies are able to elude capture. They escape. They hide in the mountains for a couple days, and then they come back. We're going to open that up a little bit more about the intricacies of that. But also, when they come back, they make an oath to Rahab. And that oath is to save her and her family. And when Jericho does fall, which I'm assuming is going to happen in a couple chapters from now, or a couple lessons from now, Rahab and the family are saved. Spoiler alert, I'm sorry if you guys haven't read the Bible. I just ruined the whole story. Jericho's destroyed, Rahab escapes. I apologize for ruining that surprise. So that's the first story. The second story is we're going to jump kind of 9 verses into Joshua and talk about the Gibeonites. The Gibeonites are a tribe who look down at what happens to Jerusalem and goes, uh-oh. They've also heard what the Israelites have been doing all the way from Egypt, all the way for 40 years in the desert, and they're a little bit scared, and they decide that they need to survive, and in order to survive, they need to get a little bit crafty. And they deceive the Israelites into, again, an oath by saying, hey, we're not going to destroy you. But they get a little bit tricky with that. They are discovered, and there definitely are some consequences, but they're not destroyed. Again, spoiler alert. Before we go into this idea of these 2 examples of grace with Rahab and this idea of grace with the Gibeonites, let's take a look at Friday. I would like someone to read Prophets and Kings, page 369 and 370. It's the last paragraph. The last paragraph on the page, just above the pink boxes. Do you have someone who's willing to read that? Steve's willing? Awesome. No distinction on account.
No distinction on account of nationality, race, or caste is recognized by God. He is the maker of all mankind. All men are of one family by creation, and all are one through redemption. Christ came to demonstrate demolish every wall of partition, to throw open every compartment of the temple courts, that every soul may have free access to God. His love is so broad, so deep, so full, that it penetrates everywhere. It lifts out of Satan's influence those who have been deluded by his deceptions, and places them within reach of the throne of God, the throne encircled by the rainbow of promise. In Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, bond or free. And you could probably add male or female.
Fair enough, thank you. All right, so in this text, it says grace is limited to who? Only certain people get grace. Who is it limited to? Everybody? No, but someone's left out. Isn't someone left out? Oh, all mankind means everybody. All. Okay. So no one's left out. It's not just for the Seventh-day Adventists. It's not just for the Jews. It's not just for our families or the people we like. It's for everybody, right? And I think that's what's wonderful about this lesson is that we see in this lesson that grace is given to people who are not Israelites, who are not from their tribe. And in fact, in a lot of ways, they're enemies. And God is still giving them grace. Thank you for reading that. I underlined one other things in there. It said, his love is so broad, so deep, so full that it penetrates everywhere. Wow, I love that promise. It just surrounds everything. That's amazing to me. All right, well, if we can, we're going to come back to Friday because they've got some really cool, I don't always like the questions that they have on Friday, and they're like, okay. But all three of the questions I thought were really interesting and kind of sparked a dialogue in myself. So if we have time today, we'll come back to the questions on Friday. But let's head back to Saturday and Sunday, right at the beginning there. On Saturday, part way down, it says, one would think that God's promise of giving the land to the Israelites did not require any effort for them. Yet the assurance of divine support does not override human responsibility. Israel stands at the border of Canaan for a second time. Remember the first time, the Israelites, they sent in 10 spies. What happened to those 10 spies? Very bad report. How many of them? Right, 10 had a bad report, and 2 said, hey, no, we can do this. Right? They looked, they spied out all of Canaan, mostly the southern parts, and they looked at the land and said, this is an amazing land. Like, wow, this is a great place to live. But the giant, like we're like grasshoppers to these guys. Their cities are fortified. The land literally, it's really harsh land as well. They spit you out. I think we should turn around and go back. Let's go somewhere else. In fact, not only were they so disheartened, but they were at the point of supplanting Moses and saying, no, we want a new leader. We're going back to Egypt. This was serious. This is a very bad report. 2 of them, Caleb and Joshua, stood up and said, no. Our strength is in God, not in man. We can do this. Let's go. But the rest of the Israelites were like, no, this is too much. God's not strong enough. We're not strong enough. And because of that lack of faith, Moses, Aaron, Caleb, and Joshua weren't able to convince them. And they spent 40 years wandering around the desert as God tried to teach them to have this faith in them.
And it was so bad that they even wanted to stone Caleb and Joshua.
Yeah, they wanted to literally kill them, right? So plant Moses and Aaron, get rid of these spies that are giving a good report, and let's completely change course. So here they are again, ready to enter the promised land. I always find this interesting when we ask God to do something for us. And the response is have faith. And I think that's a great response. But what is our responsibility with that? Where's that line between saying, God, I need you to perform this miracle, and sitting back and going, all right, God, go for it. You're God. Does God need us? No, he doesn't need us. He's God. Now, he uses us. Throughout the Bible, we see amazing examples of how God uses human elements to perform his amazing works. But God doesn't need us. So where's that line between having faith in God and just letting him do it because he's God and we can't do it, and stepping in and being like, okay, I got this? What do you guys think? Where's this line? Where's this line between giving everything to God and being part of it? Any thoughts? No hands? Okay. That question fell flat. That's all right. Some questions do. All right.
I like this microphone service.
You're welcome.
Well, at all points, I believe God requires us to respond to faith. Our faith has to work. Faith works one way or another, whether it's working against God or working with God. So you're always producing some sort of work. If you're not doing anything, you're producing something, right? You either have faith in God, and that faith, if you trust in God and His power in your life, you're going to produce fruits of the Spirit. You can claim to have faith, but if God isn't leading in your life, you will produce fruits. It won't be fruits of the Spirit, though. So effort is always involved on our part.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, we take a look at when the Babylonians attacked Jerusalem. Was it King? Oh, I'm going to mess this up. Was it Hezekiah? He literally dug a tunnel to get ready for the attackers. This wellspring. I mean, he could have just sat back and be like, "Hey, let the enemies come. God's going to destroy them." No, he actually sat there, and this was a multi-year project where he built this canal under Jerusalem for a wellspring. He didn't just sit back and be like, "Oh, okay, God's going to do everything." He took part in this.
And you have the example of the people. They come to the Jordan. This is coming up in our lessons next week or the week after that, when they're told the priests pick up the ark and they step out into the water. They could have just said, well, when the water stops, then we'll walk. But they went out, and the water didn't stop until their feet went in to the water.
Right.
David could have said, well, God, you can take care of Goliath. Could he? Yeah. But David was out there trusting. He was he was trusting in God, but his faith produced action. Same thing is the Red Sea. God told them, move forward. They could have said, no, we'll all sit here on the hillside and watch what you're going to do.
Absolutely.
So it requires, my favorite story on that faith part of taking God is Jehoshaphat and the army. They got the report that a huge giant army was coming to destroy Judea, Jerusalem and Judea. And they called all the people, they prayed, a prophet stood, God has answered, you're going to be victorious. And so when it just go out, and but you won't have to fight in there. So they had to trust that, not fight. So Jehoshaphat says, okay, everybody, the next morning when they go out, we're going to trust God, but we're going to put the choir out in front of the army.
Who do you put at the front line?
And it was interesting. It says when they started praising God, when the choir started praising God, that's when the victory happened.
Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Isn't that amazing? God requires us to step out in faith. The boat for Noah, or Noah's boat, was built before the rains came, right?
if you think of it, in the beginning, God could have named all the animals and say, Adam, just relax and chill, I'll do
Sure.
everything because I'm God, right? But I think, God giving us a part of the responsibility, it forms that relationship and give us a sense of purpose. Because,
I like
even being at work, when the boss, even though my boss, lots of times he can do it himself, but he say, okay, Roel, can you do this for me? And it makes you feel somewhat special, give you a sense of purpose.
Right.
And it's like an honor to
Right.
be able to, this responsibility is put on you to do this. So, God could do it all himself, but he does form that relationship. And God don't want us to be lazy,
Sure.
just sitting down and doing nothing.
I like that idea as well. Part of the process, and then you're engaged in that, right? I have a story when I was in college. I put on a tournament for floor hockey, because it's Canada, right? Floor hockey. And we put on this big tournament, and we said, everybody come, make your teams, come on down. And the night came, we had like 15 teams that were signed up. They came down, and half the teams weren't there. Some didn't show up. I'm like, what's going on? Like, everyone wanted to do this, but then when it came to the event, there was no commitment, right? So the professor at the time said, okay, well, here's what you got to do. You've got to say that there's a $50 charge. $50. Yep. And they'll get it back when they come that night to play. I'm like, wow, 50, no one's going to do that. We did that. A few less teams, but everybody came. Because there's an involvement, there's a commitment, there's a, I'm part of this. Instead of just, oh yeah, God, you do that. Oh, that was nice. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. So we do play a part. We play a part in being committed. Oh, I'm repeating myself. We will play a part in making this our own, right? And then what Steve was saying, say that again, Steve, the main part. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Right, okay, absolutely. We need to have the works. We need to be part of it, right? And we need to step out first before God actually does the action, right? God can do the action, but he requires that step first, right?
Speaking about that tunnel, yeah, that was during when the Assyrians were going to attack them. It was the Assyrians,
okay.
yeah.
Probably mix that
And
up.
it's interesting because that tunnel is still there in Israel.
It is, yeah.
And the British archaeologists cut out, this is like almost 100 years ago, they cut out there was an inscription on the wall of the tunnel and said, this is the tunnel that Hezekiah had constructed to bring water into the city when we were about to be under siege. And it's in ancient Hebrew. And so they cut that out, and you can go actually see that in the British Museum. They dug that tunnel with two teams, one started from one end and one from the other, and they met. Yeah,
Yeah, a little bit crooked, but
they met in the middle, and they didn't line up 100%, so they had to correct it in the middle, and they.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed with how they did that. Underground, back then, no GPS or satellites.
And interestingly enough, about 15, 20 years ago, they found, there was an archaeologist, her name is Elat Mazar, and her team is the one that found the seal of Hezekiah. And it had been preserved in the fire when Jerusalem was destroyed the first time. And his seal was preserved. And then 10 feet away from it, they found the seal of Isaiah.
Oh, did they? Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing what we can discover through archaeology that confirms the miraculous wonders of what God did in the Bible, right? It's not just fairy tales. So we have a part to play in this activity. The Israelites had a part to play as they were about to enter Canaan. If we take a look at Sunday, for me, and this is just for me, I found this particular day a little bit mundane. It talks about grace, and it talks about grace as if, guess what? Grace is a second chance. And I'm like, I know what grace is. Hopefully we all understand what grace is. So if it's okay, I'm actually going to skip over Sunday because unless there was something that you guys wanted, if you guys were looking at Sunday, I did make several notes. It was an okay day, but it was just stuff that I kind of already knew. Grace is a second chance, and it gives a whole bunch of examples of what grace is and how grace appears in the Bible. So I'm going to skip over that, but if anyone has any thoughts on Sunday, I don't want to skip. If you're like, oh, I got this really good point. Open it. Anybody? All right, skipping Sunday. On to Monday. All right, so this is down into a little bit more of the substance of Rahab. So here we see Rahab. We see the faith of Rahab. Now, not only is it mentioned in Joshua, but amazingly, Rahab appears in later parts of the Bible. Some incredible parts of the Bible that she just kind of pops up. Can anyone tell me where else does Rahab appear in the Bible? Yeah, the genealogy of David and Jesus, right? So she marries, I had it see here somewhere, Shamuel or something? Solomon, yes. She marries Solomon, and that eventually gives birth to the genealogy of Ruth, which is in the genealogy of David, which eventually is in the genealogy of Jesus. So here we have a prostitute who eventually becomes, and not even an Israelite, who eventually becomes part of the genealogy of Jesus. Wow. Where else does Rahab appear that's kind of interesting? Yeah, exactly. Genealogy of Ruth and her baby. That's right. All right, quickly take a look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 31. The faith chapter. Oh, but we got to read this. Since no one mentioned it, we got to go there. Hebrews chapter 11, 31. I'm going to have someone read that for me. Hebrews, why am I? There we go. Hebrews 11, 31. So fast with one hand. All right, I see someone over here has it. Who's going to read our Hebrews 11:31 for me? Go for it.
By faith the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believe not, when she had received the spies with peace.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So the faith chapter, right? We're talking about Abraham, Isaac. We're talking about all these great people of faith, and snuck right in there, we've got Rahab, the harlot. It even mentions, hey, just in case you forgot, she was a harlot, right? Wow. Someone of faith. Someone that we can look up to. Someone who was given a second chance, this grace. After seeing what had happened, she declared, "For the Lord your God, he is the God of heaven above and on the earth beneath." Here's Rahab acknowledging, not just saying, oh, okay, I'm about to be destroyed. I'm about to be destroyed. Please save me. Please, don't kill me. I mean, yes, she wanted to be saved, but this is a little bit more than just don't kill me, don't kill me. She had a conviction here. And this conviction, halfway down Monday, says, after seeing what had happened, she declared, "For the Lord your God, he is the God of heaven above and on the earth beneath." You know, it's kind of interesting. The Bible points out that one section, heaven above and earth beneath, only appears 3 other times in the Bible, or before that. Before that, 2 of them are in the 10 Commandments, one in Deuteronomy and one in Exodus, where it says in the fourth chapter, that God is the God of the heaven above and the earth beneath. So here we see that she is making a confession. This is serious. She has seen what's happened all the way from Egypt, all the way for 40 years. The people of Jericho, they say they are weak with fear. They are really worried. And Rahab says, "Please save me. Save me from all this trouble." I'd like to take a look at Joshua real quick. Oh, I lost my spot. I want to take a look at the oath that she asks, because I think that this is important. The oath starting in the right one. 12 to 21. I'm kind of skipping over to Tuesday a little bit. Monday and Tuesday kind of meld into each other. I want to take a look at this oath. Can I have someone read Joshua 2, 12 to 21? Is someone willing to read that for me? Thank you.
Now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token, and that ye will save alive my father and my mother and my brethren and my sisters and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. And the men answered her, Our life for yours, if ye utter not this our business. And it shall be, when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with thee. Then she let them down by a cord through the window, for her house was upon the town wall, and she dwelt upon the wall. And she said unto them, Get you to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you, and hide yourselves there 3 days, until the pursuers be returned, and afterward may ye go your way. You want me to read the whole thing, right?
Yes, please. Up to 21.
And the men said unto her, We will be blameless of this thine oath, which thou hast made us swear. Behold, when we come into the land, thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread in the window, which thou didst let us down by, and thou shalt bring thy father and thy mother and thy brethren and all thy father's household home unto thee. And it shall be that whosoever shall go out of the doors of thy house into the street, his blood shall be upon his head, and we will be guiltless. And whosoever shall be with thee in the house, his blood shall be on our head, if any hand be upon him. And if thou utter this our business, then we will be quit of thine oath, which thou hast made us swear. And she said, According unto your words, so be it. And she went, and she sent them away, and they departed, and she bound the scarlet line in the window.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's unwrap this oath just a little bit. What is Rahab asking for? What's Rahab asking for? Safety. Just for herself? Yeah, for her whole family, right? when you come and destroy Jerusalem, which I know you are, I'm asking for safety for myself and for my family. And the spies respond to this. They say, okay, we can do this. But there's some exceptions. There's some conditions upon this oath. What are the conditions? What are the conditions that the spies put on this oath in order for her to be saved?
There was a place of safety, and they had to be in that place to be saved.
Okay, so there was a definite place. They had to be in that place. Could they leave that place?
No,
No.
they wouldn't be covered.
Right, they couldn't be covered. They had to be in that place so that they could be covered. I see some other people in the back here. Go ahead.
Was it that rope that was supposed to be let down?
Yeah, what about the rope? There was something about the rope. I'm glad you're getting there. That was going to be my next question.
I thought it was very interesting that the promise that they made, they didn't know couldn't be kept unless God honored it. Because the walls of Jericho, she was in a apartment on the wall, and the walls of Jericho all fell down, but apparently the section of the wall where she was, God honored the promise and it didn't fall.
That's right, absolutely. It did not fall. So God fulfilled this promise. We're going to get there in a couple lessons. We're not at the attack of Jerusalem yet, or Jericho yet, but we know, or you guys know, that she is going to be saved, right? And this particular wall, this particular space is going to be saved. The conditions are she needs to stay in the house. Everybody in her house needs to stay there. There's a couple other conditions. The other condition was the rope. Hang the rope down. That way we know where you are and how to protect you. Does God need a rope? Was God maybe a little bit blind that day? Maybe he needed his glasses. God didn't know where Rahab was. So he put down a rope and God's like, oh, that wall, don't destroy that. Why was the rope there? Go ahead.
It was an act of obedience.
An act of obedience, maybe a sign, okay?
To me, it's really interesting that they would dye a rope red. But the symbolicness of when the Israelites came out of Egypt, they put the blood around the doorpost. And to me, that is a sign. It saves them. The blood of Jesus saves us. That red rope saved them.
Interesting. So red rope. We're going to get there in just a little bit. But yeah, the red rope, not only is a symbol, a sign, not to God, but to the Israelites, it's also kind of this symbol of the scarlet red. We're going to get there in just a second. But I like what Steve was saying. It's a symbol not to God, but actually to the Israelites. And we're going to get there again in a couple weeks. But once the walls fell, the two spies were commissioned. They had a special purpose. And they were to storm Jericho. And as everybody else is plundering the city, these two men were to go to the wall, stand in front of the door, and make sure that nobody entered that door. That door that had a rope behind it. Because again, there's destruction everywhere. Where's this house? Again, they might kind of remember, but in all this destruction, they might get lost as well. So this rope was a symbol, kind of as a tag. Hey, this is where the house is. Protect this house. And the two spies protected that house during the siege. So number one, stay in the house. Number two, show the rope. Number three, there was something else. To make this oath kind of stick.
Don't tell anybody about our plans.
Yeah, don't tell anyone, right? We don't want everyone to know, right? So keep quiet. You go kind of tell your. I was kind of reading this, and I was kind of trying to look to say, well, could Rahab tell her family? I don't know. Like, I don't know how she got all those people into her house in that day, saying, "Hey, the Israelites are attacking. Let's have a potluck at my house," because I don't know if she was allowed to tell her family. But yeah, don't tell people, right? Don't tell people that we're coming back. Don't tell people that we've made this oath with you. So there were some conditions. I was really excited because honestly, I never saw these parallels, but Sylvia was starting to make these parallels. And I would like us to turn to Exodus chapter 12. Exodus chapter 12. And here we have the Passover. Exodus chapter 12, 13, 22, and 23. 13, because I don't want to read the whole thing, and we could, but these are the important chapter or verses. 13, 22, and 23. Do I have someone who's willing to read that? Someone who has their Bible open, willing to read that? Chapter 12, 13, 22, and 23. Right here? All right, that's awesome. Thank you, Ken.
The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. You shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood which is in the basin, and apply some of the blood that is in the basin to the lintel and the 2 doorposts, and none of you shall go outside the door of his house until morning. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to come in to your houses to smite you.
All right, so what are some parallels here between Rahab being saved from the destruction of Jericho and the Passover of the angel of death? A cord in the window. Sorry? A cord in the window. A cord in the window, a symbol, right? What color? Red, yeah. Not only was the blood red, but the cord that was hung out the window from Rahab's house was also red. This crimson, this sign of being covered, of being protected. Wow, there's some similarities there. What were some other similarities? Were they told to be quiet and not tell anybody? In Exodus, did we read that at all? Again, I didn't see it. I don't know. Maybe someone else saw it. Not to go out the door. Okay, not to go out the door. That was definitely part of it, right? So a sign and stay inside. Right? Don't be going when you hear something going on out there. Don't be rushing out to say, "Hey, what's going on out here?" The angel of death is out there. You need to be inside, right? Rahab's family, "Hey, what's going on out there?" Well, there's some enemies out there, and you need to be inside to be safe. So here I thought this was amazing because I had never seen this parallel before. Now maybe some of you guys had, but there was this parallel between the Passover and God, or the angel of death coming, and the blood of the lamb. What is the blood of the lamb? Represents Christ's blood, right? We see that. We see the link between Christ and his death and Passover, right? Covering our sins, protecting us, giving us that grace that we don't deserve. We all sinned and fall short of the glory of God, but Christ comes and covers us with his blood. In the Passover blood on the door frame, the lamb's blood was a symbol to protect that house. And not only that, but this red rope was now to protect Rahab and the inhabitants in the house. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, and both events, demonstrates God's active judgment and grace also.
How so? How does it show judgment and grace? I agree with you. But how does it show judgment and grace?
Well, talking about second chances, God gave second chances in both events.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Sylvia.
I'm reading about divine tokens,
Okay.
and somehow tokens protect you from consequences, and they could be, the token is a consequence of obedience, but if you don't have it, there's going to be other consequences that come along.
Sure. I thought this was interesting, and where was it? It was Deuteronomy 7, chapter 12, where it actually talks about what is to happen. And we're going to get into the Gibeonites in just a few moments. But in Deuteronomy 7, it talks about how you're supposed to treat people. Deuteronomy 7? Sorry, Deuteronomy 20, 10 to 18. It talks about how you're supposed to treat people who you are conquering. And Deuteronomy 10, verse 18, or 10, Deuteronomy 20, 10 to 18, talks about how when the Israelites were to go into Canaan, they were to absolutely destroy everybody. And here Rahab is part of that. Jericho was absolutely destroyed. The men, women, children, ox, animals, even the wealth of Jericho was supposed to come back to the Lord. It was utterly destroyed. No one was saved. So in a lot of ways, Rahab was under this condemnation of death, this signature of a death decree. Yet even with this death decree, we go back to Friday. Go back to Friday in that one part. His love is so broad, so deep, so full, that it penetrates everywhere. We're all under a death decree, are we not? We've all sinned, right? But God is able to pardon that. God is able to say, he doesn't excuse it. He doesn't get rid of it. But there is a penalty for it. What is that? What is the penalty of death? Sorry, what is the penalty of sin? I just gave the answer. Death, right? Rahab's penalty for being part of Jericho was death. And that penalty needs to be paid somehow. How is that penalty paid? Do we all have to die? How does God get around this? Is this some legal term? How does God get around not killing everybody if we've all died, or if we've all sinned? Yeah, exactly. Jesus came down. That's the gospel news, right? That's the gospel joy that we have, that Jesus came and he's our Savior. And if we accept this grace, he's going to cover us. He has died for us. Same with Rahab. She is covered, right? I'd like to quickly, we only got about 10 minutes or so. I'd like to quickly go to Wednesday and Thursday. We talk about the Gibeonites. Before we talk about the Gibeonites, I would like to just take a quick few moments to take a look at some maps. I love maps. I'm very visual as a learner, and I need to see things, what's going on. I know a lot of times it starts just mentioning these names. Joshua chapter 9 has a lot. I took out my marker. That was silly of me. Joshua chapter 9 is where we find the Gibeonites. And it has all these names: Lachish, Gezer, cities of Gibeon, of Cherepith, Beroth. We have a Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, Eglon. And to me, I'm like, oh, okay, where are these places? I just wanted to kind of quickly show a quick map, just kind of outlines what's going on here. Jerusalem or Jericho is right here on the Jordan River. So they come over down the mountain, and they're going to cross over Jericho. And here are the different people groups that kind of occupied the Canaan area. We have the Hivites, we have the Gershites, the Canaanites were kind of right in the middle, so were the Amorites, the Jebusites, the Perizzites, and the Hittites were kind of at the bottom. I find this is interesting as well. It's kind of the same map. But I know sometimes when we take a look at a map, it's just flat. And we just say, oh, look, we can go from there to there. That's nice and easy. But it's very mountainous. So when you take a look at the Sea of Galilee all the way down to what we would call the Dead Sea now, Jericho is kind of in this bottom area. A lot of these other states or city-states are up in the mountains. If you know, we have the Philistines who are kind of down here on the sea. But a lot of the warfare and the fighting and the cities that we're talking about, they're up in the mountains. Not very conducive for chariots or horses. A lot of just man-to-man fighting. Not only that, but we're going to talk about Gibeon specifically. And in a couple weeks, we're going to talk about them crossing the Jordan River. We're going to talk about how they attacked Jericho, which is just across the Jordan. And they camp at Gilgal. They don't actually camp at Jericho. They attack Jericho, but they're not going to go into Jericho. And once they've done that, the Gibeonites, they hear of this. And they say, hey, wait a minute. We don't want to be destroyed. So they pretend that they are from a country far off, and they come down and they say, let's make an oath. And the Israelites do make an oath. What's the problem with this oath? What's the biggest problem about this oath to the Gibeonites?
Based on a lie.
It's based on a lie, yeah. What's the biggest problem with the Israelites? Something they didn't do.
Consult God.
They didn't consult God. Absolutely. Any leader worth his salt, any church leader, any Christian leader, if they are not consulting God, they're not worth the salt that they have. Right? There's not a lot to them. They didn't consult God. They were like, okay, these people look like they're far off. They've got this moldy bread. They've got these tattered sandals and wine cases. They must be pretty far away. And all of a sudden they find that, nope, they're not too far away from Ai, which they destroy right after Jericho. Keep this picture in mind for upcoming lessons, because upcoming lessons is going to talk about a league of nations, a league of city-states, and that's these city-states right down in here. All these down in here in the southern part of Canaan. They all of a sudden, they start to get worried, and they're going to attack the Israelites. That's these, actually, sorry, I apologize. They don't attack the Israelites. They're going to attack the Israelites' ally. Who's the ally? Israelites' ally that they just made an oath with? Gibeon, yeah. They just made an oath with Gibeon, and they're like, well, we're not going to go down to Gilgal. Let's attack Gideon. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So just so you guys know where Gibeon is, how close they are to Jericho and Ai, and why they might have said, whew, we need to save ourselves. And we've got 5 minutes, so I I'm worried about reading a whole lot. What can we cover in about 5 minutes? As I've mentioned, the Gibeonites made this pledge, this oath, and the Israelites were now bound to this pledge. I don't know about you, but when I take a look at promises and pledges today, how serious are those pledges nowadays? Are they really serious, or are they just kind of, meh? It maybe depends on the person, right? I guess I see pledges and promises as something that are good intentioned. I promise to do this, I promise to do that, but there's not that binding that is like, yeah, I'm going to do this at my own detriment. Back then, an oath was very serious, even to the detriment. It's kind of like an alliance, right? We see World War II and World War I, where certain nations were drawn into conflicts because of alliances that maybe weren't too smart, and they got drawn into a conflict that maybe they didn't really want to be part of. Maybe they did, but this is kind of like an oath. They take this serious. And they can't just back out from this oath. So here's a question for you. When the Gibeonites came down and asked for an oath from the Israelites, do you think that this was a positive thing or a negative thing? I think it was positive for them. Positive for them, okay. Any other thoughts, positive or negative? It says that they were crafty and cunning. Is crafty and cunning always a bad thing? Okay, sometimes it might save your life, yeah? Okay, find ways to kind of get around certain things, to, bypass certain problems, right? Instead of hitting problems face on. Sometimes we can kind of sidestep, by being a bit crafty or cunning. So I agree with Sylvia. This is definitely very good for them, right? Not so good for the Israelites, because they were told in Deuteronomy chapter 20 that any city close to you needs to be destroyed, utterly destroyed. Now in Deuteronomy chapter 20, it also talks about coming to a city that is far off. And if the city is far off, you can make peace with it. You can make peace with that city. What happens to a city if you make peace with it? They can just live however they want? They serve you. Yeah, there's servitude, right? You can survive, you can live, but you're now our servants, right? We're not going to destroy you. Congratulations, but you are now our servants. And we kind of see that in the story of the Gibeonites as well.
I think it also is important to remember, as we were talking earlier, about how the Gibeonites were shown grace by the Israelites, even though they had deceived them into an oath. The Israelites, they honored that pact that they had made with them, and then discovered who they were, but there was consequences to their actions. They were, not slaves, but they were bondsmen, and they were hewers of wood, and that sort of thing. So there was consequence to their action, but they were also grateful that they didn't get slain for lying.
Sure.
So they were shown grace by the Israelites, which is what God does. They showed grace like God showed grace to them, to somebody else.
And as we end this lesson in the next minute or so, thank you for that. This idea of grace, not only to Rahab, but to the Gibeonites that God is showing. Ken?
I think it's interesting. He brings it out that God, I think God had this in his plan, because the Gibeonites became Israelites, essentially, over time.
Yep.
And it says in here that it's possible that if they had not have done things the way they did, the God might have spared them anyway. He might have approached them and said, go easy on the Gibeonites, because they're going to become part of you. They're going to be my servants as well in the future.
Very true. Interesting. I want to go back to Friday. We started with Friday. We're going to end with Friday. No distinction on account of nationality, race, or caste is recognized by God, or gender, as Steve mentioned. Grace is not just for the Seventh-day Adventists. Grace is not just for the Jews. Grace is not just for people who only follow God. Grace is for everybody. And this grace is so amazing that his love is so broad, so deep, so full, that it penetrates everywhere. I know we could go on. There was a lot to unpack in this lesson. I hope that you come ready next week. We're going to continue to talk about the second part of grace and how God and the Israelites show grace. Any final thoughts that are really burning on your hearts?
I love the idea that most of these people did not soften their hearts to God. The Gibeonites did, and God knew their hearts.
Right, God knows that. It was a true softening of the heart and confession, right? Not just out of fear, but we recognize that you are the God of heaven above and heaven below. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for being with us. Thank you for the conversation that we were able to have today. Please be with us as we go into the sanctuary service. Please be with Steve as he brings the message to us. May your angels fill the empty spots. May your Holy Spirit tickle our brains. Thank you for this time together in Jesus' name.